The film starts with a woman named Sarah, who is in the car with her son, Chris. They were both driving to their house, which is located in the forest, a bit far from the city where they lived. Sarah had decided to move because she had just divorced her husband. It was clear that Chris was unaware of the divorce, and she didn't want to tell him yet. Instead, she told him that his dad would join them later. While they were on the road, Chris asked her, "Where's the bike you told me you'd buy?" Sarah replied, "Just wait until the beginning of the year. I don't have enough money right now." Chris got upset and said, "But I really want it." Sarah tried to reassure him, but before she could say anything more, she suddenly swerved to avoid hitting an elderly woman who appeared on the road. When Sarah stopped the car and got out, she saw the woman's face, which was frightening. She was dressed in strange clothes, and her appearance was unsettling. The woman said in a fearful voice, "That boy you're with won't stay your son for long." Sarah approached her and asked, "What's wrong? What's happening?" But the woman didn't respond, and instead, she just kept staring at Chris. At that moment, Sarah quickly raised the car's broken mirror and got in the car, driving off in a hurry. Eventually, they reached their home, and Chris was tired from the long drive, but he was in good spirits. They played their favorite game, making faces at each other and laughing. After the game, Sarah went to prepare dinner. That's when Chris noticed a large spider, and he got scared. Sarah was able to catch it and put it in a jar to take it outside. But Chris insisted, "You should kill it. If you let it go, it might come back inside and bite me." If Dad were here, he would have killed it already. After a short pause, he added, "Where's Dad? Why didn't he come?" She told him, "Things are a bit complicated to explain. Your dad might not come at all." When Chris heard this, he got upset and kicked the spider, killing it. Then he ran off into the forest. Sarah followed him, searching until she reached the center of the woods. There, she saw a large hole in the ground, like a meteor had fallen from the sky. When she saw it, she was afraid that her son had fallen in. But just a moment later, Chris appeared behind her, and he was fine. He apologized, saying, "Sorry, Mom, for what I said earlier." She reassured him, saying, "It's fine, nothing happened," and they both went back home. Later that night, Sarah was lying in the living room while Chris was in his room. She woke up to the sound of something in the house. When she went to check on Chris, she found the door to his room was open, but he wasn't there. The back door was also open. She grabbed a flashlight and went outside, calling his name, but there was no answer. She looked around but saw no sign of anyone. The darkness made her nervous, and she feared something had happened to him, so she quickly went back inside to call the police. Before she could make the call, she found Chris standing right next to her. She asked, "Where were you, Chris?" He replied, "I was just in my room, sleeping." Sarah didn't understand. She had searched the entire house, and he wasn't there. Her mind started to race, and she felt confused. But she tried to calm down and let things go. The next day, she went to her therapist and told him what happened. The therapist noticed a red mark on her forehead and asked about it. Sarah explained that she had hit herself a while ago and that it had left a mark, but it would flare up from time to time. She assured him it wasn't serious, though. After her session, she went home and made lunch. She called Chris to come down, but he was on the second floor. She turned off the TV to make sure he could hear her, and when she went up, she found him sitting at the dinner table. She was confused, wondering how he had gotten there so quickly, but she didn't dwell on it. The next day, when she went to pick him up from school, she found him talking and laughing with some new friends. She was happy because Chris had managed to adapt quickly to the new school. When she was driving, she arrived in front of a house and, once again, she saw the same woman she had encountered the first time. Sarah stopped the car, got out, and approached the woman. She asked, "Why are you standing in the middle of the road?" The woman replied, "That boy is not your son." Sarah was taken aback and said, "What do you mean, he's not my son?" The woman responded, "You need to understand the truth before it's too late." At that moment, the woman's husband, Max, arrived and greeted Sarah. He apologized for his wife, Noreen's, behavior and reassured her, saying, "Don't worry about anything, just go ahead and leave." Noreen then walked off toward the car window, where she stared at Chris. She started banging on the glass, telling him, "Tell your mom the truth. Tell her you're not her son." Then, in a fit of rage, she slammed her head against the glass until she started bleeding. Max immediately pulled her away from the car and onto the road. Sarah, completely shocked by what had just happened, quickly left. The next day, when Sarah dropped Chris off at school, she passed by Noreen's house. She decided to check on her and make sure she was okay. But when Sarah entered their yard, she was horrified to find Noreen's body lying face down, her head buried in the ground. She had died, tragically. Later, the police arrived at Sarah's house to take her statement, as she was the first one to discover the body. 2 detectives came over, one stayed with Sarah, while the other sat with Chris, playing games to distract him from hearing anything that might scare him. During that moment, Sarah watched her son playing with the detective, and for a brief moment, she imagined things that didn't seem real. But after a while, Sarah realized it was just her mind playing tricks on her, and Chris was still happily playing. After the investigation, Sarah went to Noreen's house to attend her funeral. While there, she noticed something odd. The house was filled with mirrors, but she found them all covered. At that moment, Max approached her and apologized for what his wife had done. He told her that now, he felt relieved that Noreen was no longer suffering. Sarah asked him what he meant when Noreen said, "That boy is not your son." Max explained the situation to her, saying, "The same thing happened to us with our son, James. When he turned 8, his personality started changing. Noreen started saying, 'This is not my son, this is someone else.' The situation became unbearable, so I had to take her to a psychiatrist who diagnosed her with a mental illness. She started treatment, but one day, while driving, she accidentally hit our son. He died instantly. She was devastated, and she couldn't forget it." When Sarah heard this, it really affected her. She kept thinking about their story. After that, everything seemed normal again between her and Chris, until one day, when she was exercising in the forest, she passed by the large hole again and saw Chris's toy that he hadn't played with in a while. She picked it up and returned home. When she got home, she found Chris sitting at the table, eating something he usually refused to eat, even though she had cooked it for him. She knew he didn't like it, but there he was eating it. Confused, she told him, "I told you not to go into that forest." Chris lied, saying, "I didn't go in there at all." Sarah then showed him the toy and asked, "How did this get here?" Chris got upset and stood up, pushing the table so hard that it almost hit her. He was furious, and Sarah, not knowing what to do, just stood still and said nothing. He then went to his room. Later that night, Sarah stayed awake, keeping an eye on him as he slept. After a while, she heard strange sounds coming from his room. Quietly, she crept up to his door and peeked through the keyhole. What she saw shocked her. Chris had stripped off his clothes and was moving around on all fours like an animal. He was catching a spider and eating it. Shocked and terrified, Sarah quickly backed away, turned around, locking the door behind her. Chris heard her and came to the door, calling, "Mom, is that you?" She replied casually, as if nothing was wrong, and stayed inside, not leaving. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, Sarah called the doctor, and he came to their house to examine Chris. The doctor checked his heart, but found nothing unusual. However, Sarah noticed that Chris was staring at her with strange, unsettling looks, which made her feel uncomfortable and frightened. An idea struck her. She took a small camera, set it to record, and placed it in Chris's room, hidden where he wouldn't notice, so she could find out what was happening when she wasn't around. The next morning, when she prepared breakfast, she noticed Chris eating strangely. She asked, "What's wrong, son? You don't seem like yourself." Chris looked at her and placed his hand on the wound on his forehead, from which a little blood trickled. Sarah, however, dismissed it, telling herself she must be imagining things. After this, she went with Chris to school for a music performance. She sat among the other parents, watching Chris, and reflecting on all that had happened. It became clear to her, this wasn't her son. His personality and behavior had completely changed, and as she watched him sing with a strange, eerie voice, she realized that this was no longer the child she knew. In a panic, Sarah decided to leave the performance. As she was rushing out, one of the other mothers stopped her and asked if everything was okay. But before Sarah could answer, Chris appeared with the principal. Feeling terrified, Sarah left him with them and ran out of the school. She went straight home, took the camera from Chris's room, and watched the footage. She was even more shocked than before by what she saw. With the footage in hand, she went to Max's house. When he opened the door, she immediately asked him, "Why are there so many mirrors in your house?" Max explained, "It's because my wife, Noreen, insisted on them. She always said that mirrors would show the real truth about our son." At that moment, Sarah showed Max the footage she had recorded and said, "What you'll see proves that the boy is not normal, and he's definitely not my son. What happened to him is the same as what happened with your son." Max didn't accept what Sarah was saying. He got angry and yelled, "That's not true. There's nothing wrong with my son." He then took the camera from her and smashed it in frustration. Sarah took the camera and returned home. She began trying to extract the memory card. At that moment, Chris came in and asked, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Why do you want to leave me alone at school?" Sarah hugged him and said, "I'm sorry, I was sick." After that, as she started preparing the food, she secretly put a sleeping pill in Chris's meal. When she placed the lunch in front of him, she noticed how he was still eating it mindlessly. After he finished, she went over to him and said, "Let's play our favorite game, the one where they make funny faces at each other." Chris looked at her and said, "Remind me of it, Mom. I don't remember it." This was the moment Sarah knew for sure that this was not her son. She said, "You're not Chris, my son." As soon as he heard this, he immediately lashed out at her, pushing her so hard that she slammed into the wall and hit her head, losing consciousness. After some time, Sarah woke up and found herself buried in the dirt, with Chris having dug her grave. It was just like when she had found Noreen's body. He was going to kill her the same way. But fortunately, Sarah had been lucky because of the sleeping pill she had given him, and she had fallen asleep due to its effects. She slowly recovered, pulled her head out of the dirt, and managed to crawl out. She ran to the basement, and that's when she remembered what Max had told her about Noreen seeing the truth about their son through mirrors. Sarah took the broken side mirror from the car, held it up to her face, and looked into it. That's when she saw the truth. The face staring back at her was not her son's, but the face of a strange, terrifying creature. The creature woke up and immediately attacked her. Despite being in the form of a small boy, it was much stronger than her, but Sarah managed to push it off. When she screamed, the creature let out a real, horrifying growl. Sarah, terrified, ran up and locked herself in the basement. Afterward, she went back to the forest to search for her real son. She made her way to the hole where she had previously found Chris's toy. She threw the toy into the hole, and the dirt quickly filled in around it. As she continued to crawl through the dirt, she hit her head on a narrow tunnel and followed it. The tunnel eventually opened up into a small area filled with human skulls and bones. Sarah continued digging until she found her real son, Chris, unconscious and lying on the ground. She picked him up, and as she was about to escape, she saw many other faceless creatures. As she tried to flee, one of them grabbed her hand. Sarah grabbed a nearby pole and began hitting the creature with all her strength until it released her. She ran with Chris, carrying him, and eventually escaped from the hole. She placed Chris on the ground and tried to wake him up. She picked him up again and headed for her car. But when she arrived, she found the car was locked. She placed Chris next to the car and went inside to grab the keys. Once inside, she heard the creature's voice, speaking to her in Chris's voice, trying to lure her to open the door for it. But Sarah resisted and didn't let it affect her. She grabbed the car's key and started a fire inside the house to burn everything, ensuring that the creature would die and she could be rid of it once and for all. After setting the fire, she ran out of the house and watched it burn. Once the fire was set, she took Chris and left the area, heading far away. She moved to a new city and started a new life with her real son. Sarah continued her education, eventually finding a job, and she lived peacefully with Chris. However, she developed a phobia and began constantly filming Chris with the camera, checking his identity to make sure he was still her son. She even shattered mirrors to be sure of the truth. And that's how the film ended. I hope you liked the summary. Don't forget to check out the previous summaries and subscribe to watch future ones. Take care, and we'll meet again in the next video.